her. So we're going to be talking with urban fantasy best-selling author Faith Hunter, and we're going to have a great time talking about her worlds and her inspiration and her writing. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin. So hang on for the ride because we're going to have a lot of fun. Faith, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Well, I have been looking forward to this. You cannot imagine how much, because these Zoom visits with friends are the only social interaction I get these days. So I am so happy to see you. And I love the long blonde hair. Is this a unfortunate situation benefit?
This is I haven't gotten my hair done since March. So yes, I'm several shades and a lot longer. I haven't had this hair. I haven't had hair this long since I was in high school. It's really kind of freaky. But I love it. You know,
I love it. It looks great on you.
Well,
I've taken all the color out of mine, and this is my natural silver.
It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. I'm not quite sure that I like it yet. It's very fluffy. It stands a lot more than it used to, but it's easier than dye. And like you say, I can't spend much time, if any, in the hair cutter chair. So here I am. I'm just me.
No, it's a beautiful on you, and you know, very. Yeah, I find it's advantageous that now I'm at the point where I'm growing my own highlights instead of lowlights. So this is good.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's the way to do it. And I even made the decision that if I do go back blonde, I may just go back blonde on the bottom part and leave silver on top.
I think it's just, you know, one of the upsides of this whole situation is it's sort of like we've been invited to everybody's house with the Zoom calls. We've met everybody's pet, and we've seen everybody's real hair color. I mean, you know, we've really bonded.
Yes, we have, except nobody can tell that you're wearing pajamas from the waist down, and you know, you can't see my fireplace, which is right over here, which is flickering beautifully in this seasonal cold, properly seasonable cold. And so anyway, yeah, I feel like our world has changed so much that we're learning new ways to get together, and we're also learning new ways to keep ourselves occupied in good mental health situations. The Zooms it's so wonderful just to see another human being who isn't masked and running around like they're desperately trying to get in and out and back to their car where it's safe. And it's very bizarre.
Yeah, I drove through on one of my few forays out. We, you know, go to the drive-through pharmacy. Most of the time we get groceries delivered. But on one of my few forays out, I drove through one of the neighborhoods, and there were two elderly gentlemen in lawn chairs set up about 10 feet apart from each other, yelling a conversation at each other across the lawn.
I love it.
They were still there when I came back from my errand. Must have been having a good time.
I think it's fabulous. My brother, when he goes to visit my mom, he'll stand outside without a mask, because being able to read lips is good. Then one stands outside, stands inside, and they yell back and forth. And I think it's fabulous. At least they're getting to visit with one another, you know. But it's just so hard when some people refuse to wear masks. And I've got older people. I've got my mom and her husband that I still have responsibilities for, and I can't afford to take anything to them. So masked it is.
It is indeed. And you know, we've actually kind of acquired a new set of them. I've got, you know, a couple of supernatural masks, because of course I do, and some Disney masks. And, you know, it's becoming a fashion accessory.
My hat rack by the front door used to actually have hats on it, but now all the hats are stacked one inside the other with just the brims sticking out, and have all of my masks hanging on all of the little spikes sticking out. And I have quite a lot of them, and they dry there and they hang there, and I grab one when I'm ready to go. And as sad as that is, it's very convenient.
People have gotten very creative with coming up with ways to do things together via Zoom, on Discord and some of the other things. Some of the conventions I've been part of that have pivoted to doing that have really come up with some fun things. So, if you make people bored enough, they'll come up with all kinds of ingenious ways to pass the time.
And I think everybody really is getting bored. They binge watch all the shows they haven't seen. They're spending bukus of money on all the different TV distribution platforms. They've read books until their dreams are in 12-point Courier font. And now there's just, and we're looking for the next thing, and the holidays are coming up, and everyone's trying to make a decision how they're going to be able to safely visit. And it's just our lives are interesting in the Chinese proverb way. So
yes, yeah. Now we know two things: what it means to live in interesting times, and that absolutely in some of those zombie movies, there would be people who wouldn't be taking shelter. Yeah. I don't believe the zombies are real. I'm just going to stand out here. Now we know.
Yeah. We see you. I stood through a really interesting conversation between two older ladies at the grocery store this morning. I stood back from it because one was not wearing a mask and one was. And one was shouting about her right to wear masks, and the other one said, "You certainly do have a right to wear a mask, and I have a right to my opinion that you're stupid." I just I mean, regardless of how you feel about something, arguments like this are showing up everywhere, and it's just, you either laugh about it and stay away from it, because you don't know what else they might do, or you cry about it. And I'm done crying about this for as long as I can avoid it.
Yeah, I think this is where you pull out every coping mechanism you have ever used in your life, mm-hmm. and just, rotate through them. And when one stops working, you pull another one out of the drawer and you just keep going. As long as it takes, because that's kind of where we are right now.
Yep.
But I'm going to talk about books. So Faith, what started you on your writing journey?
My 10th grade teacher, Carol Kohler, who is retired now. It was her first year of teaching at a little high school in South Carolina. And she told me that I was a very talented writer and I should make writing my career. So my mother was an artist. I couldn't draw worth a lick. My dad was an engineer, and I had no interest whatsoever in engineering. But I used both of their mindsets to start me on my way. And because of my dad, I went to the library. I did all of the research on how to write, how writers get paid, how to submit things. I had stacks and stacks and stacks of handwritten notes. I subscribed to all of the writers' magazines from Writer's Digest on down. I studied my eyeballs off. It was very intense. And then I wrote all of the most horrible poetry you could possibly imagine. That's the artistic part, supposedly, that Mother helped me with. And I'm sure if I could go back and find any of those, I would refuse to read them because I'm sure they're quite dreadful. And I went forward with that. I wrote and wrote and wrote, and I did what I call analytical reading, which means when I read a novel, if I thought it was worth studying, I would buy it. I read a lot of library books, but a novel that taught me something, I bought. And I would mark sections and say read, and that would be, this is a great way to say he smiled, or I would mark something in yellow and I would say, this is how you close quotes. The little things, the things that a lot of writers don't understand. Does the period go before? Does the period go after? I taught myself how to do this. And then I would study things like point of view. How would I would mark it in pink, because pink was my least and still is my least favorite color. And it would be the pink, and it would say, how would this character know this? You're in somebody else's head. And I would mark out that section so that I could flip back through and I could find, just by flipping the pages, I could flip back through and I could find all of those things. So I did the research the way Dad taught me, but I did it with the purpose of becoming more literary in the way that my artistic mom taught me. You didn't know that was going to...
That's very cool.
That ran on a long time, didn't it?
That was just fine. And I'm sitting here nodding, going, yeah, I did some of the same things. So I feel you. That's very, very understandable to me. Let me back up and ask you what I probably should have led with is you have a number of series out. In case there happens to be anybody out there who hasn't read all of them, can you give us a kind of drive-by tour of what your big series are and maybe how they go together, if they go together?
Okay, let's see. I've been writing since 1980. I sold my first book in 1989. It was published in 1990. I was writing as Gary Hunter with a cop named Gary Leveley. And we did 2 books, and then there was a change in society, and that kind of book was no longer being pushed. So Gary and I went our separate ways, and I published for 8 books under the name Gwen Hunter. And I think it was 8, it might have been 12. I get mixed up. And then I published all of the rest under the name Faith Hunter. And, oh, it was 12 books. I'm sorry. I do remember now. So I have 40 something books altogether, and I have no idea how many short stories and novellas and that sort of thing that I have. As Gwen, as Gary, I wrote police procedurals. And I'll start with that because there's a reason for that. As Gwen, I wrote women's thrillers. I wrote medical thriller series. I wrote mysteries, and I wrote, well, I think that's all I wrote as Gwen. And then as Faith, I started out with the Rogue Mage series, which was a big departure because it was the first time I brought in paranormal aspects into my writing. And I wrote the Rogue Mage series. I did 3 of those. And 2 anthologies. I did, then we progressed onto the Jane Yellow Rock series. I am getting ready to rewrite number 14, and I'm 100 pages right at it into number 15, which should be the last of that series unless I get finished and something happens, because I really think it's too much for me to keep up with anymore. I'm going to have to let that one go, I think, after 15. I think it will all come to a close, and it will be a complete cycle all to itself. And then let's see, what did I do after? Oh, I did the Soulwood series after that. Now, Soulwood sort of was a spin-off from the Jane Yellow Rock series, because Jane is a bounty hunter who hunts paranormal bad guys, and Nell is an escapee from a polygamous cult who, during the course of the first novel, makes the move from living off the grid and hiding from the world to joining SILED, which is the Psychometric Law Enforcement Division of Homeland Security. And they chase bad guys, but they do it legally instead of with a bounty. So there's that. And then I have a couple of new things. I have a novella coming out in Dirty Deeds in January, and it will be about 2 other characters that you've never seen by themselves on page. So that will be fun. And then there is the Junkyard Cats science fiction series that is set, and I forgot how many years in the future, but less than 100. And it features a junkyard owner who is no longer completely human either. I tend not to write human characters anymore.
That all sounds fantastic. And I love that some of the worlds intersect with each other or have spin-offs. That's always fun to get to see more of a character that you met in one situation and then get to see them in a whole nother light when they have a story and it's their story or they're playing a part in someone else's story, but you get to see them a little differently. That's always fun as a writer and a reader. So when you're not
Huge
writing,
break.
Pardon?
It gives me a huge break from those characters. When I wrote my first novel that was out of the Jane Yellow Rock world, it was the first Soulwood novel. And I was so sick and tired of writing from Jane's point of view. It was this amazing fluff moment before it got really serious. And I realized that this was a series all its own.
Which is always kind of that aha moment when you go, oh, this short story has now become a multi-book series. How did that happen?
It just does.
It's the danger of writing.
Your brain takes off and you can think, you get this feeling that there's more to this character and there's more to the story, and I can play with this, and there's a lot of threads and I can do a lot of interweaving, and it takes a life of its own inside your head. A lot of people say their characters speak to them. My characters don't really speak to me, but my storylines do. And they'll push themselves forward and say, I want to write this storyline. And
definitely all the time. Usually when you're in the middle of writing something else that's on deadline.
Yeah, or you're asleep, or you're trying to go to sleep. Or you're driving and there's no way to take notes or even turn on a recorder so you can take notes and you can't pull over. Yeah, it's always inconvenient, but I think that's part of the way our creative brains work. When we're doing something else, there's always this stuff going on in the back of our heads. I call it the hind brain, even though I know that's supposed to be our snake brain. It's all back for me, and it works its way forward into my fingers on the keyboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that running joke that I've seen on Facebook that says you wake up in the middle of the night with this great plot idea and you jot it down on the tablet you keep next to the bed, and the next morning you look at it and it says mango glove.
And at the time, it was fabulous. And those clues down, those clues, they're right there. And it made so much sense when you were asleep, and there's nothing there. Nothing.
No, it was going to be the next bestseller, but mango glove, yeah. Well, what do you like to read when you're not actually writing?
Normally I love a really good thriller, a really good mystery. I love urban fantasy, always have, even before it was called urban fantasy. Loved Anne Rice from the very beginning, and she was probably our first fantasy writer of the modern day. There were people before her, but she was probably the one that kicked off our modern fascination with things and creatures that go bump in the night, hide under the bed and scare you, but aren't all necessarily truly evil. So her Vampire Lestat just took my breath away. It did. Back then it was so groundbreaking, it was so new, and it just did everything that my heart needed at the time. And I always wanted to write in that genre, but I never could find the right voice. I never could find the right character. And then when I did, it was so freeing and so much fun. I like to bring, when I write, I like to bring the mystery into mystery style of writing, the bad guy, the supposedly good guy, and pit them against each other or pit them against a crime. And And that brings me back to the police procedurals that I started out with. So originally I planned on Jane Yellow Rock never staying in one place and going to a different city each time that there was a crime to be solved. But she fit so well into New Orleans and to Asheville that I just did not want to take her anyplace else. So instead of it being a paranormal Lee Child's Jack Reacher type character who was always on the move and lived out of her saddlebags on her motorcycle, she became a resident of New Orleans and the creepy, wonderful city that I loved so much growing up.
So what is your writing process? When you sit down to start a new book or a new series, what steps do you go through? Is it always the same? Does it change by what you're working on? Has it evolved?
Boy. Well, when I start out with a new series or a new standalone, not a new book in an existing series, that's a different process. But when I start out in a new series or a new standalone, the first thing I have to have is the character's voice. I have to find the way she sounds in my head. Is she Southern? Is she, or he, because I'm now writing from male point of views occasionally. Are they city folk? Are they Midwesterners? Are they Chicagoans? Which is, specifically a different type of Midwest. Are they, is the character New Yorker? Who is this character? Do they like animals? But mostly it's who they are, the way they sound, that I have to get right. Once I have that voice, as I'm working, writing a scene from that character's point of view helps that to come together. So as I sit down to write, I will have an idea of the character that I want and an idea of how I think the book should open and an idea of what the conflict and the problem is. And I'll sit down and I'll just start writing. And used to, it was on a tablet, but these days, of course, I use a keyboard and I just start writing until something clicks and I go, that's it. That's the character's voice. And then I'll find a name and the name will match the voice in my head, maybe not anybody else's, and I'll be able to move forward with it. Nell was always Nell. She will always be an Appalachian person who says weans and yuns and talks the way people did there. Her internal monologue changes a little bit as she grows into Siled and she grows more sophisticated about the way the world works. Jane always sounded like Jane to me. I mean, once I had that voice, I knew who she was going to be. And all I knew about Jane when I started out with her was that she's going to ride into New Orleans and she's going to take a gig chasing a bad guy and she's going to go meet a lady vampire. That's all I knew. But now I'm 15 books in. I don't have to go through that process. I know what she sounds like. I know what she feels like. I know what her code thoughts are. I know what her flaws are. I know what her weaknesses are. And now I just need the next conflict that's going to challenge her. So it does change. It changes really drastically with where I am in a series.
Oh yeah. First book in a series is always hard because you've got to work it all out.
World building, you've got to have your magic system if you're writing in paranormal. You've got to have, and your magic system, I've heard literary writers make fun of people who write with a magic system, but we have to do all of the things that they do. We have to do all the characterization, all the point of view, all the scene building, all the rooting, all the everything that a literary writer has to do, a person writing fantasy has to do. And then on top of that is this woven through it is this layer of new things that impact the character that challenge the character, that the character can become endangered from, and that the character has to learn. So we do every single thing that a literary writer does right here on the surface, the easy stuff, and then we add in all of these other rules, and we're bound by them. We can't just wiggle our nose and get out of it. We've established it. And once that first book is done, you don't get to go back and change things. You can't say, oh, I've decided that only chimpanzees can do this type of magic. It doesn't work that way. If you don't have it set up in the first book, or you don't have an empty place where you can fill something that fits in with everything in the first book, you're really in trouble.
Well, and there's always a cost to magic too. I mean, that way your magician, your mage, your wizard, whatever you want to call them, which is not all powerful. There are
Right.
limits, there are costs. If you use this, there's a price to pay. And I think that's something a lot of people overlook when it comes to building a solid magical system for a series of books. You don't sometimes see all of that if you're only exposed in books. Gotta be there, or else you just have Superman walking around who could do anything, and where's the fun in that?
On Halloween, I binge watched, after I binge watched some Musketeers, I binge watched Bewitched, which was, for those of you who don't know, it was an early magical, I think it was, the original ones were black and white, I'm not sure, but it later came out in color, about a witch character who's married to a human and trying to fit into the human world. And early on, they didn't give the character any problems to solve where her magic was concerned. She could just wiggle her nose and things would happen. But later on, there were problems that she couldn't deal with. She couldn't change on some other witch's magic, like her mother's magic. She couldn't make it go away. She had to convince her mother to reverse an evil spell. So they began to add in these costs, because otherwise it was just too easy for this witchy person to fit in. And I watched, I think, 4 of those right smack in a row, and they were all Halloween ones. And it was so much fun. It really was.
Oh, I used to love that show. I have always wanted her ability to just wiggle her nose and the whole house is cleaned up. Now that is magic.
Yes, I would go for that right now. I really, really, really need my writing room floor vacuumed, but I'm not going to do it. So there, it has to wait till the housekeeper comes, whenever she comes.
I saw somebody posted, you know, I've always said that if I just had a week where I didn't have to leave the house and nothing was going on, I could clean my whole house. Well, now we know how that worked out.
10 months later, I haven't cleaned anything. And I have a housekeeper who comes in and masks up and gloves up and cleans my house. Which was really handy, because early on in the latest unfortunate series of events, I was able to write. I was turning out so much word count. It was just staggering to me. And then my mother fell and broke her pelvis, and that came to a screeching halt. So I needed the housekeeper at first because I was working so much, and then now I need one because I have other duties. So that's going to be my excuse. I'm sticking to that one. I really like having somebody to come vacuum and do the bathrooms.
Hold on to that one as long as you can. Now, you've written across several genres. Is there a genre you haven't done yet that you think maybe someday? Or that at least would be fun to think about?
I haven't written erotica because I can't write sex scenes, so not that one. My editor has convinced me. She'll just, if the few times I've tried, she'll come back and say, this really just doesn't work. I don't really think you have to have this. Could you maybe just delete it entirely? They're that bad. They don't even try to get me to fix it. It's like, no, we're not doing this. We're not even going there, because she's horrible at it. So I think I've written in all of the things in all of the genres that I really want to. I may someday want to try an alternate historical novel, or at least very possibly alternate historical novellas. I think that would be a lot of fun. I did a couple of shorts with a character named Aetas, who is a Cherokee skinwalker, and I set them in 1830s or 1860s. I've forgotten now. And that was a lot of fun because I had to do a lot of historical research. And I think that maybe that is something that I would like to do as a novella and just see how it felt. But at the same time, I'm booked through 2020, and it's not something I would even start to think about until the end of 2020. I ain't doing it. And I've had to turn down a lot of other things in the meantime too. I have kept the contracts that that are with my main publishers. But I have backed out of every short story, every anthology, everything. If it wasn't done by March, wasn't completed, I haven't, or if I didn't have a contract with a big publisher, I backed out of everything. And it's just because there's just too much going on in my mom's health and my own health. And it just, while I would love the idea of writing in other genres, I suddenly, as we're talking about it, find that extremely anxiety producing. So no.
Okay. Now, you did mention, the idea of doing some historical research and that was fun. If you could visit any other period in history, not be stuck there, not have to live with it, but just visit, what period would it be?
Well, let's see. I think it would be, now, am I going to be there in person, or do I just sit back like a ghost and watch? Because
I didn't get nearly that detailed in this question. You can take it any way you want.
Okay. All right. So I would like to go back to Jerusalem and watch the fall of Jerusalem to the Romans. I think I would like to go back and watch the burning of Babylon, the destruction rather of Babylon. Not because I'm into destruction per se, but because so much of Western life is built upon the things that were lost then. I would like to go back to the Mycenaean age. I would like to see what we lost before Pompeii. I would like to see what happened before Atlantis disappeared. I just have this fascination with places that are no more. And I would like to dress in their clothes and wander their streets and not have to be there for the end, which would, of course, have been horrible. But I would like to see those places. And I love watching documentaries about Pompeii and cities that are just, there's nothing left of them. And I think that would be exciting and wonderful. And at the same time, heartrending.
Yeah, because of course the people who lived there were just people and
Right.
not really all that different. Every time we study the historical record, we find out they really weren't very different from us. Not in the things that really matter.
The same kind of graffiti was on their walls that is on our walls.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why a lot of textbooks can't translate the Latin graffiti in Pompeii, because it's basically for a good time call, only in Roman numerals, of course.
Exactly. I mean, nothing has changed.
When we went to Pompeii a couple of years ago, we had this very sprightly tour guide who told us he was 87. He had been giving tours for 40 some years. He had this kind of goat sort of energy, you know, he was just out there. And he absolutely loved pointing out all of the inappropriate artwork or questionable statuary. And of course, you know, they thought that certain body parts brought good luck. And so there were a lot of them, like flagpoles jutting out everywhere. And so there's another one. Did you see that over there? Look, there's one in the sidewalk. We didn't miss a one. And having this little old guy point them all out.
Well, he knew how to get the
naughtiest tour.
He knew how to get the big tips.
Yeah, it was hysterical. So no, I get it. You know, they very, very much like us, only, you know, in a different place and time.
Yep.
If you could meet any famous person, living or dead, have dinner with them, just sit around and chat, who would it be?
Oh, Abraham Lincoln. I think I would be fascinated to just listen to him talk the dreaded word today, politics. I think that he navigated some really, really difficult waters and didn't know if he'd be able to bring anything out of it at the end. And I would love to just sit and listen to him talk. I would like to sit in on World War II generals' dinners while they were planning their next incursion or retreat or whatever it was. I would love to listen to them in their discussions, and they wouldn't be open and honest and straightforward with the civilian there. I know that, but at the same time, I'd like to be a fly on the wall and just participate in that. I would love to listen to conversations in a longhouse. Cherokee, they lived in clan groups, and I would love to, or some of them did, and I would love to sit and listen to the women talk, and then sit and listen to the warriors and the beloved woman sit and talk about the next war, or what they're going to do with the prisoners, or where they're going, what the next step is to keep their clan and their tribe healthy. I think that kind of the very important things, and then the very small things. What do we plant this year to keep our people? You know, when do we plant? Have we used up the nutrients? Do we need to move our town, our camp, to another place? I would love to be able to be a part of that, and the why and the how, and to see our world before, to see our country before it was so despoiled, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like to see it when it was full of deer and full of birds, and instead of this sort of bleak place that we have today. I think that would be amazing and wonderful.
That would be really cool. Now, a different sort of travel. Of course, right now we're not going anywhere, and we're all trying diligently to stay home. But when the current unpleasant finally ends and we can safely travel again, is there anywhere on your bucket list that you are, you know, hoping to be able to visit at some point in the future?
Let's see. I want to take off and see the Grand Canyon. I want to take the RV, and I want to travel across the country, and I want to see the Grand Canyon, and I want to go and see the redwoods again. It's been quite a few years since I've been in that part of the country. I want to go maybe up into Canada, on the northwestern part of and southwestern part of the US and Canada. I would love to drive down the Pacific Coast Highway, whose number I can't remember. It's not 61. What was it? Do you remember? Was it 61?
I think it's one.
Highway 1? Okay. I want to go down. I want to travel south along there, and I want to cut across the southwestern U.S. and slowly meander back home to the Carolinas. And then I want to, I'd love to spend a winter in the mountains and get snowed in and watch it melt, and then get snowed again and watch it melt, and just spend a whole year burning wood or gas in the fireplace or whatever it takes to stay warm, and just sit and write. And that's one place I could go to be alone, and that I don't think I would necessarily feel alone. But mostly what I want to do, I want to get all of my writer friends together and go get sushi.
Yes, I'm down for that.
Of all the things I miss the most, and I do miss a lot with this latest unpleasantness, I miss that the ability to sit with a bunch of friends and just talk about our world, our writing world, and what we're working on and what we're doing and what we've learned about ourselves or our craft or our families. I'm so eager to get back into, and the next thing, I want to go to cons again. I want to see my fans. I want to be able to hug people instead of, fist bump from as far away as you can get. I want to live a life again, and I will never again complain about the crowds or the noise or the anything else. I'm so ready. I'm such an introvert, but I'm so ready to not be the introvert and to get back out there and do things with those in my profession and with friends. I haven't even had tea with anyone but once, and that was during a blustery, cold day. And my friend and I sitting there like this with our, jackets pulled tight, sipping tea while the wind whipped our germs away from us. And I want to go have tea with people. I want to go have lunch with people. I want to be able to call up a couple of friends and say, hey, let's go get sushi. Let's just go do that, or whatever you want. Tell me and I'll show up. I want to be with people.
Oh, I hear you. Absolutely. I really miss the conventions. I miss the authors. I miss the fans. I even kind of miss the convention food. It's been long enough. It's gotten nostalgic. But I totally hear you on that. Now, this one's just a silly one, Faith, but I don't know, with the TV shows you watch or the movies you've watched over the course of your life, is there any celebrity that if you ever met them, maybe you wouldn't show it, you'd be too cool to show it, but maybe inside there'd be this little fangirl squee that you actually got to meet this person?
Sam Elliott. I would not be able to speak. I would go, and that would be the extent of it. I think he is an absolutely amazing actor, an amazing person. He's a man of honor. He's been with the same woman for all these years. He didn't take jobs that he felt would disturb his family life. He's just a really fine person, and I would love to meet him. I really would.
There, put it out in the universe. You never know. Well, Faith, we have come to the end of our time. This has gone so fast, as it always does. But thank you so much for being with us. Before we go, I've got to ask, do you have something? What's the next thing coming up with you? And when should we look for it?
In January will be a Dirty Deeds anthology with a novella and a short story by me. It's an anthology with Devon Monk, Diana Farrow Francis, and R.J. Blaine, put together by R.J. Blaine and through her publishing company. And let's see, then we have the Junkyard Cats novella number 2 called Junkyard Bargain, coming out early in 2021, and a compilation called Of Claws and Fangs by me, coming out in late 2021, and Jane Yellow Rock 14, and I can't remember the name of True Blood, coming out in late 2021. So I think that's it. That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And that's something for all of us to, hold on to and wait for. Hey, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been a lot of fun, and it's just so darn good to see you.
It's wonderful to see you too. And I have lusted through the whole thing. I have lusted after that brick wall behind you. It's beautiful.
Oh, well, it's a sheet. So, I know where you can get it. Amazon will ship you.
I can have my own.
You could. It'll look exactly like this.
So on that note, thank you for having me, Gail.
Thank you so much for being with me. And thank all of you for watching us and staying with us. We're going to have a whole lot more coming up in ConTinual. So stay tuned. There's a lot more to come. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.